Welcome to Kushti TV, the straight talking YouTube channel. Today I'm going to bring to you a fascinating story. I'm going to bring to you 5 London's biggest gangsters. All of them were professional boxers. I'm going to try to remove away their guns and knives and find out who would have been the toughest London gangster, yes, without their weapons, alright, just by using these, yeah. 5 famous London gangsters. Sit back, allow me to bring them in, and I'm going to lay you the facts down as to why I think will be the toughest. And I'm going to put them in order. So I'm going to start with 5. I'm going to start with East London, Bethnal Green. I'm going to bring in Ronnie Kray, boxed as a professional in the welterweight division, and he comes to gangster notoriety for the killing of George Cornell. Yes. And then gangster number 2, I'm going to bring in Joey Pyle. Yes, formerly of Islington, settled in Carshall in southwest London. Yes, came to notoriety for the killing in the Pen Club of Selwyn Cooney. Him and Jimmy Nash made it in there with others, and they were facing the hangman's noose. Yes, gangster notoriety. Operated, as I said, in the middleweight division, Joe Pyle. Next, allow me to bring in Reggie Kray, operated in the lightweight division. East London, Bethnal Green, and yes, came to notoriety for the killing of Jack the Ant McVitie when he stabbed him to death and was murdered there under the guidance of brother Ronnie. And yes, that's what happened. The gun jammed and came to notoriety for the killing of Jack the Ant McVitie. Gangster number 4, yes, operated in the welterweight division as a professional boxer, Walworth, South London. Freddie Foreman came to notoriety as a gangster, yes, for the killing of Frank Mitchell. Gangster number 5, East London, Bethnal Green, Charlie Kray, operated in the welterweight division as a professional boxer, come to gangster notoriety for being part of the firm, the Kray firm, that went down in 1969. So sit back and let me paint a picture of their boxing careers, lay down some facts, and I'm going to put them in order, in my opinion, and hopefully the facts will make some sense. And yeah, who would win out there with these? No boxing gloves, no knives, no guns, no bats, straight up. I'm going to put from number 5 to number 1. And so allow me to start with Ronnie Kray. Ronnie Kray had 6 professional fights and 4 wins, 1 disqualification. I can only assume he lost his head a little bit. But I'm a boxer, did okay. I was told he once boxed Reggie in the boys championship, school boys championship, and I was told he allowed Reggie allowed Ronnie to win. Don't know if that's true, but when I unfold their careers a bit later, I can explain that. So, yeah, so 6 professional fights in the welter division, 4 wins for Ronnie, and it was reported that his opposition wasn't that great. 4 wins out of 6. Now let's get this right. All of these guys are professional boxers, and you can maybe name other criminals. You can come up with names, just examples. You know, Ronnie Olive, whoever, just an example of a name that could arguably match or meet these guys, or maybe better them. But they're amateur boxers, but let's get this right. These are the most famous criminals in London, and they're all professional boxers. And trust me, any professional boxer, don't matter how much anybody downtrodds them, any professional boxer that wins just a few fights here and there, or even to get a license to go in and do this, they can fight really, really well to your normal Joe Blogs. This is why they are deemed as weapons. So next fight I'm going to bring in is Joey Pyle. Joey Pyle operated in the middleweight division, as we said, become notoriety for the killing in the Pen Club along with Jimmy Nash. and they were facing the hangman's noose. Nobody ever got charged of that murder. They were very lucky, got acquitted on a retrial. And let's stay on his boxing now. 6 fights on box rec, 4 wins, fought up and down the country. Great Yarmouth, a couple hundred miles from London, 160, 70 miles, Cheltenham, boxed away a bit. 4 wins from 6, I think 75% record is that, or 66. Anyway, 4 wins from 6, and decent record, operated in the middleweight division. Now, allow me to bring in Freddie Foreman, as we said earlier, to notoriety in the gangster world for the killing of Jack Mitchell, and was in charge of that, but admitted doing it. His admission's not mine. Welterweight, I only had 1 professional fight and lost it, but that sounds a bit like lost 1 fight, not very good, but it not quite ring like that. He fought a guy called Len Breen, who was a good fighter, who had something like 14 fights and won 12, and that was a very tough fight for a debut, and he won over 6 3-minute rounds in London, and lost on points. So that really, 6 3-minute rounds is a long way to go on your pro debut against a really good fighter. Because they weren't match fighters like of today. They were town hall fighters, so that they just went out, they put a show up, and it wasn't like protected records. And if you won sort of 12 from 14, you're a really good fighter. So it sounds like on a debut, it was a tough debut. A friend of mine actually used to drive him to boxing venues. Yeah, an old friend of mine, bless him. Terry Bradshaw, he lived to his 94, 95, so he told me some of the stories. And of course, Fred's still alive. Yeah, so that was not to be underestimated. And we went on television. Now, that's impressive. And there's all of his opponents, some of them never had great records off winning 2, 3 fights from 10, but on a couple of occasions, and you've beaten fighters with like 50-50 records who had 14 fights and won 7, etc. Now that's a pretty good record, you know, 50-50 professional fighters good. And Ronnie Kray has gone out there and done the business in all 7 fights. Now we have to remember, we go back to Ronnie's notoriety, giving Jackie out at Liddy when his gun had jammed, and he went into a frenzy, going through a tough time, having lost his wife, and headshot evidently by his brother, which don't surprise you. And yeah, a brutal slaying, killing off Jack out at Liddy, but back onto his boxing, 7 fights, 7 wins. But you have to bear in mind all of these guys, why did they walk away from boxing? Why did Freddie Foreman walk away from boxing after 1 fight? Didn't he fancy it? Didn't he like it? Well, he might be making some money as a criminal, like all of them. Lots of money, as opposed to a little bit of money. And yeah, so you never know, but I mean, or perfectly honest, he could have had a really good opponent, because he was a good street fighter apparently, Freddie Foreman. Could have had a really tough opponent, and you know, I thought, well, this game is not as easy as I thought it might have been. I'm doing a job on people outside, but when you get in with a skilled man in there, not so easy. Or there might have been other reasons, you know, might just pulled off a big crime, got themselves 3 grand when they're getting 15 quid for a fight, and it was literally something like that in them days. Wouldn't have been far off from what I'm saying. Yeah, so then we go into his Charlie Kray. Charlie Kray, it did come into the gangster realms. He was associated with his brothers, arguably one of the nicer gangsters, and many believe he got done for police entrapment later on with Ronnie Field, a friend of mine. There were his gangster sentences didn't really inflict any violence like his brothers, but a good pugilist. He had more fights than all of them, the 5. He had 18 professional fights, 11 wins, 1 draw, so he only lost 6 from 18, and he started very well, a bit like Reggie Kray. He was unbeaten quite early on, his sort of first 7, 8, he had a really good record of about 10, and he had some defeats. which is common when people age, they lose a little bit of passion, they don't quite train as hard, and he might have had his head turned to what his brothers were up to and going on in the firm, who knows. But he was persistent in the welterweight division, and he had 18 professional fights and a decent record. Yeah, so and in fact he beaten some good fighters who had got 22 wins from 40 fights. And so he's a good fighter, Charlie. Let's give him respect there. So how are we going to put them in order? And going back to Freddie Foreman, who was stuck with Freddie's only had one fight and one defeat. He was on the card of two British champions, Dave Charnley and Henry Cooper. It was a serious bill. And he's in the welter division. So where does Ronnie Kray sit in the welter division? Lost 4 from 2. He disqualified in 1. He fought the same opponent that Ronnie had boxed. Ronnie's in the lightweight division. Reggie's in the lightweight division. He boxed an opponent Reggie boxed. Reggie had stopped the opponent as a lightweight. Ronnie couldn't stop him as a welterweight. So out of the 5, if we had to take away his naughty bits, he was probably the nuttiest of the 5. He was probably the least you would want to face with one of these or something else. But I'm going to put him the 5th worst fighter, and I'm going to give him the respect in his passing, where people liked him or not. He would have still been a tough bloke, but I'm going to put him in the 5th position, Ronnie Kray, as the worst straightener fighter if they went out in the cobbles, because his brother could stop somebody 2 weights below him that he couldn't. His opponents weren't that great on their record, in all honesty, but he was still a good fighter, but he'll be the 5th, his toughest. And following in number 4 would be Freddie Foreman. It's a difficult one. It might be a bit harsh, but he's had 1 fight, 1 defeat, and hasn't done it again. He was noticed for having some lots of street fights and fist fights before he came to gangster notoriety. When he was still the sort of young villain, if you like. But I'll give him all the credit in the world. He had 1 fight, win 6 rounds with a good fighter. And arguably I could be misjudging a little bit, but I'm going to put him number 4 of the 5. Because we've got to remember these boys are pound for pound. The answer is who will win outside on the cobbles if they never had their weapons. But because he's in the welter division, I'll come back to that. I'm going to go for fighter number Reggie Kray. Well, arguably you could say Reggie was the best fighter of them, but we're going out in the cobbles, and he acted in the lightweight division. But arguably he could have been the best pound for pound, but he acted in the lightweight division. He had 7 professional fights. He was a London junior champion, schoolboy junior champion, and he was a good fighter. If we took away his weapon of choice, why am I number 3? Because he's a lightweight, 7 unbeaten. He's got the best record, no doubt. And this leaves me with who am I going to pick as number 2? Well, for me, with his persistence in the welterweight division, Reggie has stopped at 7 fights. Charlie continued having 18 fights. Now 18 fights is a lot of fights for a professional. There's lots of sparring, lots of work being done. And to tough it out, many people did say Charlie was the best fighter of the 3, but the least nuttiest outside. Charlie would be the one you want to go out for if you had a row in the pub, and to go outside you probably get a straightener. You got the other 2, might be a bit different. I'm not saying the others wouldn't have straighteners. I think one of them certainly wouldn't. I think probably Reggie would, but anyway. But he'd be an handful. 18 professional fights, losing 5, and withdrawing 1. Yeah, good record, good solid record. And as I say, did he have his head turned by the brothers? Otherwise his record may have been better, and he beat some decent fighters in that. So number 2 on the cobbles is going to go to Charlie Kray, and number 1 hard man of the famous London gangsters, who were professional boxers. I think we'll go with Joey Pyle. Why? His record, 4 from 6. Size, pound for pound. Pound for pound, as I say, arguably Reggie, arguably Charlie. But pound for pound, I knew Joe was a big man, active in the light, in the middle, and touched, I think, maybe light heavy, almost at one of his fights. He's the bigger man, won 4 from 6. Got a fancy, he would have just been a bit big pound and would have toughed them out. And I think the man that they called the Don of Dons, who resided southwestern London, Carshorten, I think he probably would have come up as the governor with these through his side. But trust me, the 5 men in question may not have been any world beaters, but they were seriously hard fighting men. And the man I said is number 1, Joey Pyle, once said to one of his staunch good friends, Dell, he said, anybody who ever said they bodyguarded with me, tell him lies. He said, I never needed a bodyguard. I could fight myself. And proven, and as I said, it's a big middleweight, he was over 6 foot. He was just toughed it out. But let me know who you think would have won out of these 5 legendary gangsters if you took away the shooter or their blade. I'm going Joey Pyle, and then I'm going Charlie Kray, Ronnie Kray, Freddie Foreman, and Ronnie's picking up the field. But yeah, and he'd have been the worst of the 5 in my opinion. I think that's fairly factual. He'd been worse of the 5 in a straightener. But he'd be the least one I'd like to get on the wrong side of, because I think he was a out and out nutcase. That's what I think the other guys you could mediate with, you know. They were getting it on with people that were in the same industry. They didn't harm what we might call civilians or normal people. You know, when Joey Pyle walked in Jimmy Nash in that nightclub, he actually told me, he said, documentaries make it sound this way and that way. He said, we were well outnumbered. We were well outnumbered. And they had to resort to what they resulted in, the shooting. Joe went to his grave, would never tell me who done the shooting. He never said, just said the weapon of choice was a gun. I will tell you a quick story to finish on. Joey Pyle told me, a policeman come into his cell and said, well, we will excuse you hanging if you tell us that Jimmy Nash committed this murder. And he said, leave me, I'll be resting in my cell. And the policeman, or detective, then went into Nash's cell, Jimmy Nash's cell, and said, tell us Joey Pyle done it, and you'll be excused hanging. And he says, you better leave my cell as well, and nothing further to say to you. They got acquitted, got a retrial and acquitted. In the meantime, when they got acquitted, hanging was become abolished. So at least the second time round, if they got guilty, they couldn't get hung. But anyway, in fact, nobody's ever been charged with a murder. Everybody knows it's a gunshot wound, just don't know who. They all speculate. But, anyway, hope you've enjoyed the little chat. That's all I got as the artist of London gangsters out on the streets on the cobble. But bear in mind, these men are all professional fighters. Makes you wonder, do they really need a gun or a knife? They could beat most people with these. Thanks for tuning in.